The bell above the door of the daily grind chimed a familiar, weary tune, announcing the arrival of yet another soul seeking refuge in the warm embrace of caffeine. For Nicole, who stood behind the polished mahogany counter, it was just another Monday. The air, thick with the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon, felt like a second skin. Her hands, nimble and practiced, moved across the espresso machine, pulling shots with a mechanical grace born of countless repetitions. Her life, for the past 4 years, had been this: a series of predictable mornings and quiet afternoons, a constant hum of steam wands and clattering ceramic. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. She was in her late 20s, but her eyes held a wisdom that suggested she had already lived 100 years. The weight of her student loans and the specter of her family's small failing farm back home had etched fine lines around their corners. Her brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her uniform, a simple apron over a black t-shirt, was a testament to her no-frills existence. Her dreams of becoming a marine biologist had long since been packed away in a metaphorical box in her mind's attic, replaced by the more pressing, immediate goal of simply getting by. A man shuffled to the front of the line, breaking her rhythm of thought. He was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, with a face that looked like a roadmap of every hard day he'd ever lived. His clothes were rumpled, a threadbare tweed jacket over a faded shirt, and his movements were slow, deliberate. He wore a heavy wool cap pulled low, and a faint, almost invisible layer of grime seemed to cling to his skin, the kind that only truly vanishes with a long, hot shower. He ordered a small black coffee, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. When he reached into his pocket, his hand, gnarled and trembling slightly, emerged holding a small collection of coins. He laid them out on the counter with a quiet clink, his eyes fixed on them as if he were trying to summon more from the empty space around them. A few pennies, some nickels, a couple of dimes, all counted with a solemn, almost ritualistic care. Nicole's gaze fell to his hands, calloused and rough, and then to his face, which was a mask of quiet desperation. He was counting and recounting, his lips moving silently. She knew the look, the private shame of not having enough. She had worn it herself more than once, when her card had been declined at the grocery store. I think I'm short," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. He looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw a profound exhaustion, a weariness that went bone deep. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor of empathy ran through Nicole. It was a fleeting yet powerful feeling. Without a second thought, she reached past the coins and hit the cash button on the register. "Don't worry about it," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "It's on me." The man's head snapped up, his expression a mixture of disbelief and relief. "Oh, no, I could," he stammered, his hand trying to push the coins towards her as if their combined weight could somehow cover the cost. Nicole smiled, a genuine warm curve of her lips that reached her eyes. "It's just a coffee," she said. "Everyone deserves a good start to their day. Consider it a gift." She poured the coffee, the dark liquid swirling into the white ceramic cup, its aroma a promise of warmth and comfort. She handed it to him, her fingers brushing his calloused ones for a fleeting moment. He took the cup, his grip surprisingly firm. He didn't say thank you, not with words. Instead, his eyes, which had been so hollow moments before, filled with a sudden, overwhelming gratitude that spoke volumes. He nodded once, a sharp, decisive gesture, as if to commit her face to memory. Then he turned and walked out of the café without a backward glance. The bell chimed again, and he was gone. Nicole watched him go, a small, contented smile on her face. The interaction was over in less than a minute. She forgot about him immediately, her mind already moving on to the next customer, the next task. The day continued, a monotonous rhythm of orders, small talk, and the constant hiss of the steam laund. She had no idea that a small act of kindness, a simple cup of coffee, had just been the first stone in a massive, life-altering landslide. The next week passed in a blur of caffeine and conversation. Nicole's life remained unchanged, a perpetual cycle of work, bus rides, and quiet evenings spent poring over textbooks she couldn't afford to buy, relying instead on library copies. She had a small, cramped apartment above a laundromat, and the rhythmic thrum of the washing machines was the soundtrack to her nights. She had a roommate, Chloe, a bubbly art student who was perpetually broke but perpetually optimistic. Chloe's boundless energy was a welcome contrast to Nicole's quiet pragmatism. On Sunday morning, the café was bustling, a lively chorus of laughter, clinking silverware, and the chatter of regulars. A sudden silence fell over the small parking lot outside, a pregnant pause that drew everyone's attention. Nicole, wiping down the counter, glanced toward the large window. A sleek obsidian black car, so smooth and polished it looked like a liquid shadow, glided to a stop in front of the café. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, a machine of such exquisite luxury it looked utterly out of place on their small, unassuming street. It was a car that didn't just announce its presence, it declared it, a rolling statement of wealth and power. The doors, which opened backward in a theatrical sweep, swung open with a silent hydraulic sigh. A foot, encased in a polished, expensive leather shoe, stepped out. Then a figure emerged, tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal gray suit that hugged his broad shoulders and narrowed at his waist. He was clean-shaven. His hair, now a distinguished silver, was neatly styled. As he turned to face the café, the morning sun glinted off the expensive watch on his wrist. Nicole felt her breath catch in her throat. She stared, her mind trying to reconcile the image of this man, this beacon of effortless sophistication, with the weary, scruffy figure from a week ago. But it was him. She was certain of it. The tired lines were gone, replaced by a confident smile, and the weariness in his eyes had been replaced by a sharp, intelligent glint. He had the same strong nose, the same determined set to his jaw. He was the man she had bought coffee for. A hush fell over the café as he walked in. His presence was a palpable force, an invisible aura of authority and success that made everyone, from the regulars sipping their lattes to her fellow baristas, straighten up a little. He walked directly to the counter, his gaze sweeping over the café before settling on Nicole. He smiled, a genuine, easy expression that lit up his entire face. "Nicole," he said, his voice the same low, resonant rumble she remembered, though now it was filled with a new, confident inflection. He had a slight, unplaceable accent, perhaps a residue from a life lived in many different places. "You probably don't remember me." "I do," she said, her voice a little shaky, a tremor of confusion and surprise running through her. "You're the man with the coffee." He chuckled, a rich, warm sound. "Indeed, though I'm usually Leo Tran." He extended a hand, and she took it, her palm feeling dwarfed and almost insignificant in his. His grip was firm and reassuring. "And I'm a man in your debt." "No, you're not," she said quickly, her cheeks flushing with a quiet embarrassment. "It was just a coffee. Seriously, it was nothing." "On the contrary," he said, his eyes holding hers with a piercing, unwavering intensity. "It was everything. It was a cup of human kindness, given when you had nothing to gain from it. That's a rare commodity these days, Nicole." He paused, letting his words hang in the air for a moment, a weighty, significant silence. "I wanted to thank you properly, and I wanted to talk to you. I'd like to offer you a future." Nicole stared at him, her mind a blank slate. The words echoed in her ears, a bizarre, unbelievable promise. A future? What did he mean? A job offer? A scholarship? Her mind raced, unable to form a coherent thought. All she could focus on was the stark contrast between the two men, the one who had counted his last coins and the one who had just emerged from a car that probably cost more than her entire life's earnings. This wasn't a simple thank you. This was something else entirely, something she couldn't begin to comprehend. He saw the confusion in her eyes. "I understand this must be a shock," he said gently. "Would you be willing to meet me? Not here, of course. For a proper conversation. My car is right outside, if you're free after your shift." The offer was so audacious, so utterly out of the realm of her normal life, that it almost felt like a dream. But the warmth of his hand in hers, the rich fabric of his suit, the undeniable reality of the Rolls-Royce waiting outside, all grounded her. This was real, and she was about to take a leap of faith. "Yes," she said, her voice steadying. "I'll meet you." She had no idea what she was agreeing to, but a strange, exhilarating feeling, a mix of fear and excitement, told her that whatever it was a moment that would change everything. Nicole walked out of the café that afternoon and into a world she only saw in magazines. The Rolls-Royce was a beast of a car, its sleek, powerful lines an imposing sight. The chauffeur, a silent, efficient man in a dark suit, opened the rear door for her with a respectful nod. The interior was a cavern of luxurious silence. The leather seats were so soft they felt like they were molded to her body, and the polished wood trim gleamed in the afternoon light. It smelled of new car and old money. Leo was already seated, a tablet in his lap, his fingers moving with a focused speed. He looked up and smiled as she slid into the seat across from him. "Welcome," he said simply. "Make yourself comfortable." The car glided into the city traffic, the chauffeur maneuvering the massive vehicle with an almost surgical precision. Nicole was too overwhelmed to speak. She just watched the world go by through the tinted windows, a world that seemed so distant from her own, as if she were an invisible observer. "I imagine you have questions," Leo said, setting his tablet aside and giving her his full attention. "A few," she admitted, managing a weak laugh. "The car is a lot." He chuckled. "It is a bit much, I agree. It's a necessity, unfortunately. People take you more seriously when you arrive in something like this." He leaned back, his posture relaxed and easy. "Let me explain. What you witnessed last week was a test. Not a test of you, specifically, but a test of humanity. I'm a venture capitalist. My job is to invest in people, in ideas, in the future. The company I'm launching next, a new kind of social enterprise, is focused on something much bigger than just profit. It's about kindness. It's about building a better world." End quote. Nicole listened, her mind struggling to keep up. Venture capitalist? Social enterprise? These were words from a world she didn't know. "I've made a great deal of money," Leo continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "And I've seen a great deal of greed. I've been lied to, cheated, and betrayed, all in the pursuit of wealth. It's a sad reality of my business. So, when I decided to launch this new venture, I knew I couldn't just trust a person's resume or their pitch. I needed to see their character. I needed to see who they were when they thought no one was looking." "So you were testing people?" she asked, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. "You were just walking around, pretending to be broke?" "Not pretending," he corrected her softly. "I took a week, wore the same clothes, didn't shave, and carried just enough change for a coffee. I went to 10 different cafes in 10 different neighborhoods and asked for a small black coffee. 9 times out of 10, The barista either ignored me, told me to come back with more money, or simply gave me a pitying look. But you, he said, his voice full of warmth, you didn't hesitate. You didn't even think about it. You just did it. You saw a person who needed help, and you helped. He looked at her, his eyes full of a quiet admiration. That, Nicole, is the most valuable quality a person can have. It's not on a resume, it's not in a business plan, it's in the heart, and it's what I need for this project. I need people who are driven by a deeper purpose than just money. I need people who believe in kindness. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on his lap. I'm not going to offer you a job, he said. I'm going to offer you a partnership, a future. I want you to be a part of this new enterprise. I'll pay for you to finish your degree, in whatever you want. I'll get you a proper apartment, one with a view and no laundry machines humming beneath it. And I'll give you a position in the company, where you'll learn the business from the ground up. You'll be in charge of our charitable arm. Your only job at the start will be to find people, just like me, who need a chance, and give them one. You'll be a good judge of character. Nicole was speechless. The sheer audacity of his offer, the scope of it, was breathtaking. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, handed to her on a silver platter. Her student loans, her family struggles, her own quiet desperation, all of it could be gone, just like that. Why me? She asked, the words feeling small and inadequate. I'm just a waitress. I have no experience. That's exactly why, he said, the corner of his lips turning up at a knowing smile. Because you're not tainted by the pursuit of success. You're driven by something real. I can teach you about business. I can't teach you to be kind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, unassuming business card. It was thick, with a raised gold logo. He handed it to her. Think about it, he said. No pressure. It's a crazy offer, I know. But if you're interested, you have my number. Call me. I'll be waiting. The car pulled to a stop in front of her apartment. The chauffeur opened the door, and she stepped out, feeling like she was a character in a movie, not her own life. She stood on the curb, the business card in her hand, watching the Rolls-Royce glide away until it was just a dot on the horizon. The laundromat hummed beneath her feet, a stark reminder of the life she had just been offered the chance to leave behind. She had no idea what to do, but for the first time in a long time, the future, once a bleak and empty road, seemed full of possibility. The next 2 days passed in a haze. The business card with Leo Tran's name felt like a foreign object in her hand. Nicole spent her work shifts in a daze, the conversations of her customers a distant hum in her ears. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubts. Was this a scam? Was he a con artist? Could this really be happening? Her roommate, Chloe, was a mix of ecstatic and suspicious. "It's like a fairy tale, Nick," she'd exclaim, her eyes wide with excitement. A real-life prince in a Rolls-Royce. Then, a moment later, she'd narrow her eyes. But what's the catch? Nobody just gives away millions of dollars. Chloe's practicality, mixed with her youthful optimism, was a perfect mirror to Nicole's own conflicting feelings. One part of her, the pragmatic, weary part, whispered 1,000 warnings. It was too good to be true. The other part, the one that had long since given up on her dreams, dared to hope. It was a chance, a way out, a way to not only help herself, but to help her family. She finally called the number on the card on the 3rd day. Her hand trembled as she dialed, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. The call connected, and a confident professional voice answered. "Leo Tran's office. How can I help you?" "Hi," Nicole stammered. "This is Nicole, from the Daily Grind. I'm calling for Leo." A moment of silence, and then the voice on the other end softened. "One moment, please, Ms. Nicole. He's been expecting your call." The wait was agonizing. She held the phone to her ear, listening to the muffled sounds of an office in the background, a symphony of success. Then Leo's voice, warm and familiar, came on the line. "Nicole, I'm glad you called. Did you think about it?" I did," she said. "I'm still a little overwhelmed. But, yes, I want to talk more. I'm interested." "Excellent," he said, and she could hear the genuine smile in his voice. "I have a car waiting for you. It's a black Audi this time, a little less intimidating. It'll take you to my office. We can talk there." The car arrived an hour later, and Nicole, dressed in her best, a simple but elegant black dress, felt a rush of adrenaline as she slid into the back seat. The ride was silent, but this time she felt a strange sense of purpose, not just awe. The car pulled up to a gleaming glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of the city's financial district. The building seemed to touch the sky, and she felt a small thrill of fear and anticipation. The receptionist was polite and professional, a woman who seemed to glide across the marble floor. She led Nicole to a private elevator, and a moment later, the doors opened onto a massive, sun-drenched office. The view was breathtaking, a panorama of the city stretching out in every direction, the cars on the streets below looking like a child's toys. Leo was standing by the window, his hands in his pockets, staring out at the world below. He turned as she entered, a genuine smile on his face. "Welcome to Tran Ventures," he said, gesturing to the view. "This is where we plan to change the world." They spent the next 2 hours talking. He told her his story, a rags-to-riches tale of a young man who had come to the country with nothing but a hunger for success. He had built an empire, but in the process, he had seen the ugliest side of humanity. Now, in his later years, he was driven by a new purpose, to use his wealth to foster kindness. He told her about his vision for a new kind of company, one that would invest in socially conscious startups, and one that would have a massive philanthropic arm, a fund dedicated to helping people in need, just as he had once been. "I need someone to lead that part of the company," he said, his eyes unwavering. "Someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side. Someone with empathy. I can't just put a number cruncher in charge of a compassion fund." He laid out the terms of his offer in a way that was both shocking and simple. A generous salary, a significant share in the company's profits, a new apartment, and the freedom to get her degree, with all expenses paid. But the most important part, he stressed, was her role in the company. She wouldn't be a token hire. She would be a leader, an integral part of his team. Her first project would be to create and manage a program that would find and fund young entrepreneurs with socially conscious business ideas, people who put purpose before profit. "I'll have you work directly with me for the first few months," he explained. "You'll learn everything you need to know. You'll sit in on meetings. You'll learn about finance, about strategy, about managing people. It'll be a trial by fire, but I have no doubt you'll rise to the occasion." Nicole listened, her head spinning. It was a monumental, life-changing offer, and she knew in her gut that he was serious. He wasn't a con artist. He was a man who had seen the worst of the world and was now trying to build something better. "I don't know what to say," she finally managed, the words feeling completely inadequate. "You don't have to say anything," he said, a warm, reassuring smile on his face. "Just take my hand." He held out his hand across the massive mahogany desk. Nicole, without a second thought, reached across and took it. Her grip was firm, a testament to a newfound resolve. "I'll do it," she said. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he said, his smile broadening. "Welcome aboard, Nicole. We have a lot of work to do." The next few months were a blur of new experiences. Nicole moved into a sleek, modern apartment with a stunning view of the city skyline. The silence was almost unsettling at first, a stark contrast to the familiar thrum of the laundromat. She bought new clothes, a wardrobe of elegant professional attire that she felt she was still a stranger to. She enrolled in a business management program at a prestigious university, her marine biology dreams finally laid to rest, replaced by a new, equally exhilarating ambition. But the biggest change was her work. She spent her days in Leo's office, a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and endless learning. He was a demanding but patient mentor. He taught her the language of finance, the intricacies of business strategy, and the art of negotiation. She was a fast learner, her innate intelligence and grounded practicality serving her well. She had an instinct for people, a deep-seated empathy that allowed her to see beyond the numbers and into the heart of a person's project. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an investor, a decision-maker, a person with real power. Their conversations in the Rolls-Royce on the way to meetings became a familiar routine. It was during these rides that she learned about Leo's own past, the challenges he had faced, the betrayals that had hardened him. He had been a lonely man, a man who had built an empire but had few people he could truly trust. Nicole's quiet strength and unwavering integrity had become a solace to him. One evening, after a long day of meetings, he turned to her in the car, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Nicole, you've taught me something. I thought I was testing you, but you've been teaching me. You've reminded me that money, power, they are nothing without purpose. And your purpose, your kindness, it's a force to be reckoned with." Their professional relationship had evolved into a deep, quiet friendship. They trusted each other implicitly. Nicole was no longer just his protégé, she was his confidant, a partner in his vision. She had blossomed under his mentorship, her quiet confidence growing with each passing day. She had found a new life, a new purpose, and a new identity. Her family was, of course, stunned by the change. She was able to pay off their farm's debts, something she had once thought was an impossible dream. She flew them out to the city, showing them her new apartment, her new life. They were proud, but also a little overwhelmed. They saw the Rolls-Royce, the gleaming office, the confident woman she had become, and they knew that she had entered a world so different from their own. But when she spoke to them, her voice was still the same, full of warmth and love, and they knew that she was still there, Nicole. The most gratifying part of her job was the compassion fund she was now heading. She met with people from all walks of life, young entrepreneurs with brilliant ideas but no resources, artists with a vision for social change, and community leaders with a passion to help their neighbors. She used Leo's methods, though in her own way, to see beyond the surface, to find the people with the right heart. She found a single mother who had developed a new kind of recyclable fabric, a former teacher who had a plan to create a mobile library for rural communities, and a veteran who was building a program to train other veterans in coding. She wasn't just giving them money, she was giving them a chance, a belief that their dreams were possible. She saw the same look in their eyes that she had once seen in Leo's, the look of quiet desperation giving way to a sudden, overwhelming hope. One morning, almost a year after that fateful day at the café, Nicole was in her own office, now a spacious, light-filled room with a view similar to Leo's. The phone rang. It was Chloe, her old roommate. "Nicole!" Chloe's voice was full of a breathless excitement. "You'll never believe it! I'm on a bus and I just saw a guy counting change at a coffee shop. And he looks just like that guy who came in a week ago, only now he's in a suit and a fancy car is waiting for him. It's like something out of a movie." Nicole smiled, a deep, genuine warmth spreading through her chest. "It's not a movie, Chloe," she said. "It's life, and sometimes life gives you a chance to be the person who changes everything for someone else. Now, What's his name?" She hung up the phone, a small, knowing smile on her face. She picked up a thick business card, the same kind Leo had given her, but this one with her own name on it. She looked out the window, at the city below, at the endless sea of faces, of stories untold. She had been given a gift, and she had used it to build something. She was a different person now, yes, but she was still the same Nicole, the woman who had, with a simple act of kindness, changed the trajectory of her life and countless others. She was ready to use her new power to give someone else a cup of coffee, and, in doing so, to offer them a future. Julian's hands were a testament to a life spent building things. They were rough, calloused, and stained with the faint, indelible memory of motor oil and sawdust. Now, they trembled slightly as he held the paper cup, his knuckles white against the hot cardboard. He sat alone at a small, wobbly table in the corner of a coffee shop, a place far less refined than the daily grind. It was a utilitarian space, filled with the faint odor of burnt toast and the constant, low murmur of conversation. He had his notebook open, its pages filled with intricate diagrams and hurried, almost illegible notes. On the table beside the cup lay a small, metallic device, no bigger than his palm, a tangle of wires and tiny circuit boards held together with what looked like pure faith and a lot of electrical tape. He was 72 years old, and this was his life's work, a project he had poured his entire retirement into, a dream he was now trying to sell to a world that saw him as nothing more than an aging eccentric. The young woman who had bought him the coffee, a girl with bright, kind eyes, had been an unexpected shock. She had seen him fumbling with his coins and had, without hesitation, just paid. He had tried to refuse, his old man's pride a stubborn wall, but her smile, so genuine and unassuming, had disarmed him completely. He hadn't seen her since, and in the quiet desperation of his days, he had almost forgotten her, a flicker of light in a long, dark tunnel. He had no idea she had just been the subject of a phone call, a beacon of hope in the vast city. He was a man who had long since stopped believing in miracles. Later that afternoon, as Julian packed up his things, a sleek, unassuming black sedan pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce, but it had the quiet, confident air of a car that belonged to someone important. The back door opened, and out stepped a young woman. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a simple but elegant black pantsuit. Her face was calm and composed, but her eyes held a kindness that was strangely familiar. "Mr. Julian?" she asked, her voice soft but direct. Julian paused, his heart thumping in his chest. "Do I know you?" he asked, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Not exactly," she said, offering him a warm, reassuring smile. "But I know a friend of yours, Chloe. She's a friend of a friend. She saw you at the coffee shop today and told me about your project." Julian's guard went up. "My project? What about it?" he asked, clutching his notebook a little tighter. "She said it looked interesting," Nicole said, taking a step closer, her gaze falling on the small, intricate device in his hand. "She said you looked like a man with a vision. I'm an investor. I specialize in unconventional ideas. I'd love to talk to you about it." Julian's mind was a whirlwind of suspicion and disbelief. He had spent months trying to get a meeting with anyone who would listen. He had been laughed out of offices, his ideas dismissed as the ramblings of a senile old man. And now, a young, impeccably dressed woman was just showing up, out of the blue, to talk to him. He was ready to walk away, to dismiss her as another con artist, but her eyes, those same kind, clear eyes, stopped him. They held a deep-seated empathy he had seen only once before, in the gaze of a young waitress at a different coffee shop, a memory that now felt 1,000,000 years old. "I don't want your charity," he said, the words a low, stubborn growl. Nicole's smile didn't falter. "It's not charity, Mr. Julian. It's an investment. I can tell a good idea when I see one. You wouldn't have been counting your last coins for coffee if it wasn't something you believed in, something you were pouring your life into. People who have that kind of conviction, that's who I'm looking for." Her words hit him with the force of a physical blow. She understood. She saw his struggle, not as a sign of weakness, but as a testament to his dedication. It was a perspective he hadn't encountered in a very long time. "I have a car right here," she said, gesturing to the sedan. "We can go somewhere and talk. I'd love to hear your story and to see a proper demonstration of your device." He hesitated for only a second, his mind flashing with the images of all the doors that had been slammed in his face. He looked at her, at the quiet strength in her stance, the unshakable sincerity in her eyes. He had nothing to lose. He had already lost everything. He finally nodded, a silent, tired admission of trust. As he slid into the car, Nicole followed, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sealed him in a new reality. She didn't press him for details, but instead spoke to him with a quiet professionalism and a deep respect, asking him about his background as an engineer, about his years of work, about his family. She listened, and in her listening, she made him feel seen in a way he hadn't been in decades. Over the next few weeks, Nicole became a fixture in Julian's life. She introduced him to Leo, who, with his innate ability to read people, saw in the old man the same quiet tenacity he had once seen in Nicole. Julian's project, a small, portable device that could filter and purify water using a new, sustainable process, was a scientific marvel. He had been ahead of his time, his designs too radical for the conventional minds of corporate venture capitalists. But for Leo and Nicole, it was the perfect fit for their new company's mission. Nicole navigated the bureaucratic hurdles and the skeptical investors with a quiet grace and an unyielding confidence. She argued that Julian's device wasn't just a product, it was a solution to a global crisis. She spoke with a passion that came from a deep, personal understanding of what it meant to struggle, what it meant to have a dream and feel like it was slipping through your fingers. She was no longer just repeating what Leo had taught her. She was speaking from her own experience, her own heart. Leo watched her with a quiet pride. He had given her a chance, but she had taken that chance and turned it into a platform for others. She had not only learned the business, she had imbued it with her own unique sense of purpose. He had been right about her. Her character was the most valuable asset he had ever invested in. Their relationship had deepened into a quiet, almost familial bond. Nicole had become a regular at his Sunday dinners, where they talked about more than just business, where she listened to his stories about his late wife and the lonely life he had built after her passing. She, in turn, shared her own stories about her life before the daily grind, about her family's farm, about the quiet desperation she had once felt. They were two people from different worlds, united by a single, simple act of kindness that had been the catalyst for everything. The decision to fund Julian's project, however, wasn't without its challenges. During a tense board meeting, one of the company's more conservative investors, a man named Marcus Sterling, questioned the wisdom of pouring millions into a project conceived by an unknown amateur. "Look, Leo, I get the philanthropic angle," Marcus said, his voice a low, dismissive drawl. "But this isn't a charity. We're a venture capital firm. We need a solid return on investment. This man has no track record, no business experience. We're throwing money into a black hole." Nicole, who was sitting next to Leo, felt a surge of indignation. She had been preparing for this moment. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Mr. Julian's track record is right there, in his decades of work as a brilliant engineer. He may not have a business plan, but he has something far more valuable, a product that can save lives. This isn't a gamble, it's a moral imperative, and I believe that in the long run, doing the right thing is the smartest investment a company can make." Marcus scoffed. "A moral imperative?" "We're not in the business of saving the world, Ms. Nicole. We're in the business of making money." "I disagree," Nicole said, her gaze unwavering. She looked at Leo, a silent appeal for his support. He simply watched her, a small, knowing smile on his face, allowing her to handle the situation. "We're in the business of investing in people. In the past, we've invested in companies that sell products. Today, we're investing in a company that sells hope, and I have a feeling that in this day and age, hope is a very profitable commodity." She went on to present a detailed market analysis she had prepared herself, a meticulous, data-driven presentation that showed the immense, untapped market for Julian's device. She laid out a clear, actionable plan for scaling up production, for distribution, for marketing. She had learned from the best, and now she was proving herself, not just with her empathy, but with her competence. By the end of her presentation, Marcus was silent. He looked at Leo, a new respect in his eyes. Leo simply nodded. "I believe in Nicole," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And she believes in Julian. That's enough for me." Julian's project was greenlit. He was ecstatic, his old eyes welling with tears as he shook Nicole's hand, a silent thank you that spoke of a lifetime of struggle. He was given a proper lab, a team of young, brilliant engineers to help him refine his design, and the resources he needed to make his dream a reality. Nicole oversaw the entire project, ensuring that the company's mission, its core value of kindness, was at the forefront of every decision. A few months later, the first prototype of Julian's device was unveiled. It was a beautiful, elegant piece of engineering, no longer a tangle of wires and tape, but a sleek, functional machine that could, in a matter of minutes, turn contaminated water into a life-giving source. The team celebrated, and Julian, watching the device work, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. It was no longer just his project. It was a symbol of what was possible when a simple act of kindness was allowed to grow and flourish. The story was picked up by a major news outlet, an article about an old inventor and the young, compassionate investor who had given him a chance. The article included a photo of Nicole and Julian, standing side by side, a silent testament to a partnership built on a shared belief in the power of a good idea and a kind heart. Nicole, scrolling through the comments, saw one that made her smile. "Waitress buys coffee for struggling man. He returns a week later with a vision. She gives him a chance. He gives the world hope." Her life, once a quiet, monotonous rhythm of work and quiet desperation, was now a symphony of purpose and passion. She had used the gift she had been given not just to build her own life, but to build a new life for others. The lessons she had learned were not about money or power, but about the profound, rippling effects of a single act of generosity. She had been tested, she had been transformed, and now she was the one doing the testing, the one looking for the quiet moments of grace, the small gestures of humanity that had the power to change the world. She had become a force for good, a testament to the fact that kindness was not a weakness, but the most powerful currency of all. Julian's device, once a collection of wires and hope on a coffee shop table, had become undeniable success. It was a stunning, life-altering triumph. The first units, deployed in communities suffering from a lack of clean water, were met with an overwhelming emotional response. Videos of the device in action, of children drinking clean water for the first time, went viral. It was more than a product. It was a symbol of what was possible when a good idea was fueled by a kind heart. The news stories that had initially focused on the quirky inventor and his young, compassionate investor now called the device a humanitarian marvel. The company, Tran Ventures, was no longer just an up-and-coming firm. It was a recognized leader in socially conscious innovation, and Nicole was at the forefront of the movement. Her work had taken on a new dimension, a quiet, profound satisfaction that went beyond the numbers on a spreadsheet. She met with families whose lives had been changed by Julian's invention. She saw the relief in a mother's eyes, the vibrant health returning to a child's face. These moments grounded her, reminding her daily of the immense power she now held and the responsibility that came with it. Her past, the quiet desperation, and the endless counting of coins no longer felt like a burden, but a compass that guided her every decision. But as the saying goes, success attracts attention, and not all of it is welcome. The immense positive press surrounding Julian's device caught the notice of the established giants in the water purification industry. One in particular, a monolithic corporation called Hydra Corp, known for its ruthless business practices and its cutthroat acquisitions, began to circle. Its CEO, a man named Sterling Vance, was a relic of a different era of capitalism, a man who saw no value in social good, only in market share. He had a long, bitter history with Leo, a rivalry built on opposing ideologies. While Leo had always sought to build up, Vance had only ever sought to acquire and demolish. One afternoon, a sleek, unmarked car pulled up outside Tran Ventures. Out stepped a team of men in dark suits, led by a man whose posture was a testament to his own arrogance. Sterling Vance was a striking man in his 60s, his hair perfectly coiffed, his expensive suit a testament to his immense wealth. His eyes, however, were cold, unreadable windows into a soul devoid of any real empathy. He was there for a meeting with Julian, a meeting Nicole had no knowledge of. Julian, still a little overwhelmed by his newfound fame, had received an offer that was almost unbelievable. Hydra Corp was proposing to buy his patent for a sum that would have secured his family for generations, and they were offering him a prestigious, well-funded research position with them. They were promising him everything he had ever dreamed of, but they were doing it with an underlying tone of quiet menace. "They told me my device was a liability," Julian told Nicole later that evening, his voice a mix of awe and unease. "They said it was a threat to their business model, that they were doing me a favor by buying it before I got into too much trouble. They said they were the only ones who could protect it from, well, from themselves." Nicole's blood ran cold. The veiled threat was unmistakable. Hydra Corp wasn't interested in Julian's invention for its humanitarian potential. They were interested in controlling it, in neutering it, in burying it if they had to. They saw it as a disruptive technology that needed to be neutralized, and they saw Julian as a vulnerable old man they could manipulate. "I told them no," Julian said, a quiet pride in his voice. "I told them I was loyal to Tran Ventures. I told them you and Leo had a vision for this thing, and I wouldn't sell it out for a quick payday. But they were very persistent." Nicole felt a surge of protectiveness for the old man. She saw the same look in his eyes she had once seen in Leo's, the one that showed he had been a man alone for a long time, a man whose ideas were so often dismissed. She knew she had to protect him, not just from Hydra Corp, but from the insidious allure of a deal that could destroy his life's work. She went directly to Leo. He listened to her with a calm demeanor, a slight smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sterling Vance," he said, a note of distaste in his voice. "I knew he'd make a move eventually. He's always been predictable in his greed. This is a test, Nicole, a test of everything we've built and everything you've become." What do we do?" she asked, a tremor of frustration in her voice. "You tell me," he said, his gaze fixed on hers. "This is your project. Julian trusts you. He chose you over them, and now you have to show him that his trust was not misplaced. You have to convince him to stay for the right reasons, not just because of loyalty, but because you can help him build something far more meaningful than just another product line for Hydra Corp." The challenge was immense. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about purpose, integrity, and the future of Julian's invention. Nicole spent the next few days in deep contemplation. She couldn't just throw more money at the problem that would make her no better than HydroCorp. She had to appeal to the very essence of Julian's being, to the quiet, determined inventor who had spent his life in pursuit of a single, world-changing idea. She scheduled a meeting with Julian, not in her office, but at a community center where his device was already in use. When he arrived, he was a little perplexed. But Nicole led him to a small, crowded room where a group of mothers and children were gathered around a single water faucet, a testament to the device he had built. "Julian," she said, her voice low and sincere, "HydroCorp can offer you a fortune. They can offer you a prestigious title and a lab with all the resources you could ever need. But they can't offer you this." She gestured to the room, to the smiling faces, to the tangible impact of his work. "They can't offer you the satisfaction of knowing that your life's work is saving lives, not just making some CEO another $1 million. Julian looked at the children, his eyes welling up with a mix of pride and profound emotion. He had worked on this project in solitude for decades. He had been ridiculed for it, dismissed for it. Now, for the first time, he was seeing the real human impact of his genius. "Vance told me that my device was a novelty," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "A toy. He said the real work was done by companies like his." "The real work is being done right here, Julian," Nicole said, her voice firm. "It's happening in this room and in hundreds of other communities around the world where your device is giving people a chance at a healthy life. Your invention is more than just a product. It's a movement of kindness, of purpose, of hope. HydroCorp doesn't want to be a part of that. They want to bury it because they can't compete with it. They can't compete with something that isn't driven by greed." Julian looked at her, at the young woman who had seen past his worn clothes and his humble existence, who had, with a single act of kindness, given him a second chance at his dream. He saw in her eyes a conviction that was so much stronger than any offer of money. "They want to hold a press conference tomorrow," he said, a new resolve in his voice, "to announce the acquisition." "Then we'll hold our own," Nicole said, a determined glint in her eyes. "We'll hold our own press conference, and we'll show the world exactly what you've built and what we're going to do with it." The next day, as HydroCorp's team gathered for their celebratory press conference, they were blindsided. Nicole and Julian had assembled their own media presence, inviting reporters and journalists who had covered the success of the device. Julian, no longer the quiet, humble inventor, stood at the podium, his voice strong and clear. "I was offered a fortune to sell out," he said, his gaze fixed on a camera. "I was offered a deal that would have secured my future, but it would have destroyed my life's work. I was told that companies like Tran Ventures, who are driven by a moral purpose, can't compete with the likes of HydroCorp. I'm here today to prove that wrong." He then gave a passionate, emotional speech about his journey, about the people whose lives he had touched, and about the young woman who had given him a chance, not because she saw a potential profit, but because she saw a person. Nicole stood beside him, a silent, powerful presence, her quiet dignity in stark contrast to the bluster and aggression of Sterling Vance's team. The story went viral. The public outrage against HydroCorp was swift and overwhelming. Their stock plummeted, and their acquisition attempt was a resounding public failure. Julian's device was now not just a humanitarian tool. It was a symbol of the triumph of purpose over greed. In the quiet aftermath, as the dust settled, Nicole stood on the balcony of her office. The city spread out before her. She had won, not by outsmarting her rivals, but by outcarrying them. She had been tested, not just in business, but in her core beliefs, and she had emerged victorious. Leo walked up beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Nicole," he said, his voice filled with a profound pride. "You proved that a different kind of business, a better kind of business, is possible." She smiled, a genuine, satisfied expression that reached her eyes. "It's what you taught me, Leo," she said. "You showed me that a little kindness can change everything. And now I'm using that lesson to change the world." She had come full circle. The girl who had counted her last coins was now a force of nature, a leader in her own right. Her purpose no longer just about survival, but about using her power to build a better, more compassionate world. The Rolls-Royce had been the key that opened the door, but it was her heart that had led her to where she was now.